Hey guys, Miss Bianchi here. We're going to get into chapter 9 today, and it is solving quadratic equations by graphing. And our learning target is just that. I can solve quadratic equations by graphing. All right, so a quadratic equation is an equation that can be written in the standard form of ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. And when we write a related function as its related quadratic equation, we're just going to set that equal to y instead of 0. So it's y is equal to ax squared plus bx plus c. So for example, instead of it being equal to 0, it's just going to be equal to y. Okay, so it's still 3x squared plus 3x, but instead of it being equal to 0, it's equal to y. Okay, and then these are the steps that we're going to follow. We write the related function, and then we graph by identifying the axis symmetry, finding the vertex, graphing two other points, and then reflecting. And then our final step is to find the zeros. And remember that the zeros are just the x-intercepts, and they're also the solution, or solutions, depending on if you have more than one. All right, so letter A, solve each quadratic equation by graphing. So my very first step is to write the related function. So my related function is going to be y is equal to x squared plus 2x minus 3. Again, just replacing the 0 with y. Now, my next step is to graph it. But before I can do that, I need to find the axis of symmetry. And remember, I like to abbreviate it with AOS. And remember that the axis of symmetry formula is negative b over 2a. So my b is 2, but I have to make it negative. And then 2 times my a value is really 1. Negative 2, and then divided by 2 is just going to give me negative 1. Okay, so my axis of symmetry is at negative 1. So I am going to go ahead and plot that, or draw that, I should say, at x equals negative 1. You can go ahead and make a note that it's x equals negative 1. Okay, now my very next step is to identify and graph the vertex. Remember, when I want to find my vertex, I use the AOS point, or the axis symmetry point. Okay, I plug that into my equation. So it's going to be y is equal to negative 1 squared. Remember, I put that in parentheses. Plus 2 times negative 1 minus 3. So all I did there was plug the negative 1 in for the x's. Negative 1 squared is 1. 2 times negative 1 is negative 2. And then I have subtracting 3. Now I need to do order of operations. So I do 1 minus 2, which is negative 1. And then negative 1 minus 3 is going to be negative 4. So that means my vertex is at negative 1, negative 4, because that point goes in for x, and that's my y. Okay, so I am going to go ahead and plot that point at negative 1, negative 4. Okay, and now I need to find two other points. I'm going to make a small little table, and I did run out of room on this one, so I will be doing the 0 part in another sheet of paper, just so you guys know if you wrote too big as well. So my two other points I'm going to pick x to be 2. And then I'm going to plug in that for x. So I would have 2 squared plus 2 times 2 minus 3. And you could pick different points if you wanted. It wouldn't have to be what I picked. 2 squared is 4. 2 times 2 is 4. And then I have minus 3. Order of operations, 4 plus 4 is 8. 8 minus 3 is 5. So that means I have a point at 2, 5. And I'm going to go ahead and plot that right now. And then I need one more point. So I'm just going to pick 3. So plug in the 3 into that equation. Three squared is 9. 2 times 3 is 6. And then subtract 3. 9 plus 6 is 15. And 15 minus 3 is 12. So this one is going to go off the graph a little bit, but that's okay. So I have a point at 3, 12. My x is 3, and then my y was 12. I'm going to go ahead and plot that down. And this is 10, so I'm just going to kind of eyeball it and go up about 2. If you wanted to do another point, you could do that as well. It wouldn't matter. But you might go off the graph. Okay, so I graphed those points and I reflected them across the x. Or I didn't reflect them yet, so that's what I have to do. So I'm going to reflect them across the axis symmetry. So this is 1, 2, 3. So I got to count this way. 1, 2, 3. And this point is 1, 2, 3, 4 away. So I have to go 1, 2, 3, 4 away there. Now my very next step is to find the zeros of this quadratic equation, and I'm going to do that by factoring. So on a separate sheet of paper, just because I ran out of room. My original equation was y is equal to x squared plus 2x minus 3. And now I'm actually going to replace my y with 0 again because I want to know what the zeros are. And I need two numbers that when multiplied, so a times c, a is 1. A times c is -3, so two numbers that when multiplied give me -3. And when added would give me 2, because I need to add up to my b number. And those numbers I know will be -1 and 3, because -1 times 3 is -3. -1 plus 3 is +2. If you learned a different way to factor or identify the numbers, that's fine. This is just how I've always done it and how I've always taught it. So now I need to use these numbers. So I have x minus 1 times the quantity x plus 3, and that's going to equal 0. And then I'm going to set each of these pieces equal to 0. So I have x minus 1 equals 0, and x plus 3 equals 0. And then I'm going to solve for x. So I get x equals 1, and x equals -3. So this tells me we have solutions at x equals 1 and x equals -3. So what I need to do now is to actually plot these points. So I have a solution at x is equal to 1. So that means at the 1, I got to plot that point. And then -3. You'll notice that they actually mirror onto each other as well. And now I just got to connect everything. So in this case, we had two solutions. So we had a solution at -3 and then +1. When you're all ready, feel free to flip it over. Okay, letter B. I have x squared minus 8x is equal to -16. And I need to rewrite right away because this is not equal to 0. So I have x squared minus 8x is equal to -16. So I need to get equal to 0 first and then replace the 0 with y. So I have x squared minus 8x plus 16 equals 0. And then I'm going to replace the 0 with y. Okay, now my very next step is to find my axis of symmetry. And that formula is -b over 2a. My b value is -8. And my a value is 1. Negative of -8 is +8. And then 2 times 1 is 2. And then 8 divided by 2 is 4. So my axis of symmetry is at x is equal to 4. And then I'm going to go ahead and plot this. 1, 2, I'm sorry, not plot, draw. 2, 3, 4. Okay, and now I need to use that point to find my vertex. So I'm plugging this into x. So I have y is equal to 4 squared minus 8 times 4 plus 16. Then I just got to simplify. So 4 squared is 16. -8 times 4 is -32. And then I have that +16. In order of operations, 16 minus 32 is -16. -16 plus 16 is just 0. So my vertex is at 4, 0. So I can go ahead and plot that now. And that's going to be right in line with the axis of symmetry. Remember, the axis of symmetry always goes through the vertex. And now I need 2 other points. So I'm going to make a little table. And I'll pick when x is 1. So I have 1 squared minus 8 times 1 plus 16. That's going to be off the graph again. Why don't you erase that? Let's do 2. Or you can just change the 2 into... Yeah, do that. Okay, so 2 squared is 4. -8 times 2 is -16. And then plus 16. I probably actually wouldn't be off the graph. I just did 2 when I did it by myself at first, so I want to make sure I'm doing the same numbers. 4 minus 16 is -12. -12 plus 16 is 4. So that means I have a point at 2, 4. And I can go ahead and plot that. And then I'll do 3. All right, so I have 3 squared minus 8 times 3 plus 16. 3 squared is 9. -8 times 3 is -24 plus 16. All right, 9 minus 24 is -15. -15 plus 16 is 1. So I have a point at 3, 1. And now I can reflect everything. So this is 1, and then 1, 1, 2, 1, 2. Now, my last step is to always find my zeros, but because the vertex is also the minimum, this is going to be the only x-intercept. So x equals 4 is the only solution. Okay, so you can go ahead and then connect these. All right, for letter C, I definitely used way more paper than mine. I did it by myself, so I'm gonna have to do that whole thing on a separate sheet of paper. I have negative x squared equals 4x plus 5. So the first thing I'm gonna need to do is get x squared on the other side of that. So I had negative x squared is equal to 4x plus 5. I'm going to add x squared, add x squared. So I would have 0 is equal to x squared plus 4x plus 5. And then replace with y. All right, now I need to find my axis of symmetry. So negative b over 2a. 4 is my b, so it's negative 4, and then all over 2 times a. 2 times 1 is 2. Negative 4 divided by 2 is negative 2. So my axis of symmetry is that x equals negative 2. So I'm going to draw that in. Okay, now I gotta do my vertex. So I have to plug in that number for x into my equation. Negative 2 squared is 4. 4 times negative 2 is negative 8. And then plus 5. 4 minus 8 is negative 4. And negative 4 plus 5 is 1. So my vertex is at negative 2, 1. All right, now I need 2 other points. And I'm going to pick negative 3 for x, just because it's close to where the vertex is. So I have negative 3 squared plus 4 times negative 3 plus 5. Negative 3 squared is 9. 4 times negative 3 is negative 12. And then plus 5.